But going back to something I mentioned earlier in the slides, if you get nothing else from this webinar, but this, I'll consider it a win. Dash is not just for visualizing the data. Rather, it allows you to take input from the user or take some sort of trigger and do something with that information. Now that can take many different forms, but one of the most common asks that we get from people is, can you do write back? And the answer is an absolute yes. So looking at this graph on the left here, so notice this button is grayed out. If I click it, it doesn't do anything. But if I look a little more closely at this graph, on the x-axis, we have the budgets for these different initiatives. On the y-axis, we have how much those different programs actually cost. So I'm not a finance expert, but I know enough to know that anything that uses more money than you were allocated is probably something you want to take a closer look at. So if I click on one of those points over the line, that button that was previously grayed out now becomes selectable. And when I click it, I'm able to start playing around with this UI. Now I can type in some information, and then on button click, we're taking all of that info that I entered, turning it into a record, and sending it somewhere downstream. I know that was a lot of info that I just mentioned. I just want to make sure that everyone understands this piece. We're not just visualizing the data. This isn't just the rightmost part of your data flow diagram. We're actually able to take input from the user and use that to do something downstream from the application. I'm able to select the different fonts that I want to use for different parts of the application. If I'm building a report view, I'm able to say what those reports look like. I can even say I want the buttons to be 3D. All sorts of options at your disposal. And at the end, you just get this nice export option. You take that code, paste it into your application, and then that theme will show up for all the users who visit that app. So that's a pretty common theme that hopefully you're all starting to see by now of Dash Enterprise, is that we're giving you all this tooling to make the building out of your applications simpler and easier. What I'm bringing up now is the newest part of the Plotly offering, something called Plotly Studio. This screen here is my list of projects. I can see all the different applications that I've created using Studio. And what we're going to show you is that full process from end to end of creating a new application. So if I click this new project button, I'm first prompted to upload a data set. So I can click here, go to my list of files, and just to keep things simple, I'm going to choose a pretty standard financial data set. Right, so I pointed to that file, click the next button, and now optionally, I'm able to tell it the sorts of things that I want to include in my application. So if there's specific types of visualizations that I want to put in there, or specific parts of the data that I want the app to focus on, I'm able to give that input here. But just for fun, I want to see what Studio is going to generate for us without any sort of prompting. So I'm going to skip that piece. And now, once we've gone through those first two steps, we're ready to start generating the application. So the first step of that is going to be generating an outline. This will take maybe half a minute to a minute. But what's happening here is we're taking the data set that I've uploaded, we're sending it to the model. That model is parsing the data set, looking at the columns, looking at the data actually contained within that table. And then it's figuring out what is the data that we're looking at? What story are we trying to tell? And what sorts of widgets or visualizations might be useful for understanding and exploring that data set? So I can see it's giving me a lot of information in here about the title of the app, a description of what that app is going to show us, and then the types of components we want to include. Stock price trends over time, box plots showing different metrics, sentiment scores, and then also things like filters so that I'm able to manipulate the data rather than just visualizing it. And then down here, This is kind of the coat of paint on top of it. I'm able to tell it what I want that application to look like. Now, I haven't written a single line of code. I just pointed to a data set and said, build me something. I could make adjustments here. I could remove some of these options. I can modify them. But again, just to show you kind of the purest Plotly Studio experience, I want to take the starting point that it suggests for me and see what it looks like. So when I click Generate Application here, this is the part that'll take a couple minutes. But what it's doing is it's taking that human readable file, we call it a spec file, specification file. It's taking all the text in that file and using that as a basis to generate a custom Dash application for us. On the right-hand side here, you can see all the different components that are starting to get built. So we're getting some filters. We're getting that graph of the stock price trends over time. All sorts of different things that are being created in parallel by this large language model. Now, again, this will take a couple minutes. And that's expected, right? We're not just generating some super simple one-line bar chart. We're generating a full-blown application. We're talking potentially hundreds or even thousands of lines of code in the back end. But the beauty of Studio is that I don't need to be a coder. I don't need to look at the underlying Python code and understand it. All I need to be able to do is using my words, tell it what I want from my end application.